Okay, just a few more minutes on this wide belt sander. What I started to talk about on the last video was the sanding belts. One of the things that you have to be careful of is you have to pay attention to the sanding belt, where the joint is and the type of joint that it is. This particular one has what we call a lap joint, and you can tell by the feel of it that when this belt was made, what they do is they cut it to length. They shave off some of the sandpaper or the sanding grits, and then they overlap the belt and glue it back together, and that's what creates your joint. The complication that arises is when you put that belt on the machine and it's actually running backwards, all of these belts will have arrows on them and tell you what direction that they're supposed to turn. If you happen to put one on backwards, what it does, it starts peeling against, putting pressure against that joint, and actually pulls the joint apart if it's not installed properly. Probably the more popular one and the more common one is this one here, and you can see it on the inside. I don't have a large belt here to show you, but on the inside they have a heat-treated fiberglass tape. And this is a much better. This is a butt joint. They just cut it and they tape it together, and it's applied with heat, and it's horizontal. The fibers on that tape run horizontally, which gives you your strength. And the fact that it's a butt joint with tape means that that belt could actually run in either direction. And you get a lot more life out of the belt. You can run for the morning on one way and turn the belt around and run the other way, and you get a little more life out of the belt as well. But that's something you have to pay attention to. And here we're going to carry on with the wide belt sander. I've got a few more things that I want to discuss. All production sanders, whether it's an edge sander, a wide belt sander, a stroke sander, they will have these two components. And we talked about it earlier, and that is, one is the graphite. And the purpose of that graphite, it's there to lubricate. It's a dry lubrication that you use on the back of the belt, and it helps to draw the heat away from that sanding surface. The felt padding gives you cushioning and heat absorption. And so these are important for performing, or in how the sanding belt performs. So if your belts are heating up, there's a chance you're going to start burning or heating up the surface and burning the surface where you're not actually sanding. You're actually doing more damage to the veneer than actually the panel than a good quality sanding job would give you. If you can control the heat, you get better life out of your sanding belts, and you get a better job at your sanding. So this is something that we've already talked about with one of the other videos. This is our sander that we have in the shop. The front head on this one is your dedicated sanding head. It's actually your sizing head. And then the back end assembly here is for polishing. And if we could follow through one more there, Laurie. And yeah, this just talks a little bit more about the style of sanding heads. The pressure plates that you see set up, there's one in front of that sanding head on the front, and there's one behind it. Those are set up by the technician when they set up the machine. That's not something that we typically fool around with on a day-to-day basis. And what that does is that helps you to maintain pressure. If you can maintain the pressure, you improve the quality of the sanding. So it's very delicate setting those things up. They have to be set up very accurately in order for the sander to perform. If they get out of alignment, you start to get a snipe, you get sand throughs, and so on. And maybe that's some of the issues that we've been having the last couple of weeks on that sander. But we're hoping to get that corrected now as soon as we get back to work. Maybe we can move forward a little bit. The sanding pads, this is the one that I really wanted to touch on, and that is making sure that the machine is set up to sand what it is that you want to sand. There are two different sanding pads available. One is a solid aluminum bar, and that is used for sanding solid wood. It is a non-flexible head. It will give you a good quality sand. It's got felt, it's got graphite on it. It's there to give you a nice flat surface for sanding. The other one over here is a more flexible one. It also has the felt and the graphite on it, but it is a flexible pad. And that pad is actually designed to move, and you need that for sanding veneer. You don't want to be using your veneering pad for sanding solid wood, because then you're not going to get a nice flat surface. And we're going to skip through a bunch of these because we've already looked at these displays. And the last one that I want to show you is your control panel. And these gauges, these amp gauges that you see in front of you, the operator should really be paying close attention to that. These gauges will tell you how much pressure or how many amps your motors are drawing. So if you're working the machine too hard, these gauges will tell you. These bars that you see on that gauge, they should only be moving one bar, possibly up to 2, depending on what it is you're cutting. But for the most part, you see very small amount of movement on those for a proper sanding job. If you're getting too much pressure, you're loading the machine down too heavy, increasing the risk of a snipe or a burn or a sand through. So as an operator, you really do need to pay close attention to these gauges. Okay, one more there. And that wraps it up for sanding. There's lots of more information on the slides. I've kind of skipped through a little bit. So hopefully you can go back through those slides and it will make sense to you.